Utah DEI offices closed so fast, woke staff depressed and grieving. From Inside Higher Ed, Utah Vice President on DEI closures, quote, "It's been a grieving process." Lori McDonald, the University of Utah's Vice President of Student Affairs, reflects on the expedited process officials took to comply with the state's new anti-DEI law. These laws also just don't come out of the blue. They know these laws are coming down. When they hear these laws are coming, that's when they should start to make plans about how they're going to adjust. But they didn't, so everything gets shut down really quickly. And from the Daily Universe, University of Utah closes LGBT Resource Center to comply with new Utah law. The University of Utah is one of many institutions in Republican-led states nationwide to be impacted by legislation mandating the closure of diversity, equity, and inclusion offices, as well as cultural and affinity centers that typically fall under the DEI umbrella. And why do all of them have to be shut down? Because they can't be funded by the state. That's what the law says. And the state doesn't even want federal money passing through the state to be given to colleges for discriminatory programs, because the citizens of that state need to live in a state where people aren't being discriminated against and treated unfairly. Though some praised Utah's law for being more lenient than others, it still prompted the U, as the flagship is known, to close 3 centers: the LGBT Resource Center, the Women's Resource Center, and the Center for Equity and Student Belonging, previously called the Center for Ethnic Student Affairs. The Black Cultural Center remains open but has been stripped of all programming, leaving it only as a community gathering space. The U implemented the changes to comply with the guidance from the Utah System of Higher Education, which clarified that universities could not offer resources that appeared to be available only to some students and not others, even if they were technically open to all. When the changes went into effect on July 1st, they drew backlash from the campus community members. Inside Higher Ed, that actually really does do a good job on these stories, spoke over Zoom with Lori McDonald, the university's Vice President of Student Affairs, about how the university approached the rollout of HB 261, Utah's anti-DEI bill, what the fall semester will look like without the campus cultural centers, and the potential comeback of the Black Cultural Center. First question. On public misconceptions about how the U implemented the state's anti-DEI bill. She responds, "I feel that maybe what was missed, not intentionally or anything, is maybe we don't take as much time to appreciate how the infrastructure of an institution traditionally changes rather slowly. And this moment in time was something that was done very quickly. A law was passed that had implications to how we structure and do things. I appreciate that the law in Utah was written so that it would go into effect July 1st, and it was signed into law at the end of January, so many would think that is a good period of time to figure it all out and to make these changes. Actually, when it comes to the way we traditionally do things here, that is not very long. It then took some time to get guidance from the state authority. It was like we were making changes quickly, and that was difficult for many of our communities to wrap their heads around. I don't want that to come across as defensive in any way, but I also recognize that at least the University of Utah, many of our faculty and students are not around over the summer. I think there's this perception that has come out in reporting that things were done at a time when many stakeholders and people in the community did not feel they had time to give input, and that's very valid. Yeah, there's no question about input. It's not about asking stakeholders like people who would be affected by the closure of this center or the cancellation of that center, like, hey, what do you think about this? It's nice for people to get together and talk about their feelings, but this is just compliance with the law. Because political and ideological actors decided they needed to push their agenda and their ideology on faculty, on students, on the college, and do it at the expense of the government. And in state after state after state, they're clamping down with new laws preventing these people from doing this so that they understand, hey, you want to do this, you do it with your own resources. Go raise money from some rich person that thinks what you're doing is the right thing. But don't try to do it with government money on public college campuses. It's as if these people have no concept of right or wrong anymore. They have no values that match values that came before them pushing their agenda. Other steps the university had to take in figuring out how to implement the bill. With student services, probably the largest, most profound part of the bill was that it prohibited the university from having a division of equity, diversity, and inclusion. The division here had included several centers that were mostly student-facing, meaning that the students dealt with them for the most part. But I would be remiss in saying that they didn't also bring the community together and our faculty and our staff. So they additionally spent more resources indoctrinating the faculty and the staff with this. Saying that needed to be reorganized was tremendous. It had staff, it had spaces, it had programs, some long traditions that moved to EDI, equity, diversity, inclusion, when it was created, and some that were brand new traditions. So they had programs in place that, yes, did offer certain services and certain resources specifically to certain races and groups of people that were specifically identified, and they had to lose all of that too, because they pushed it too far, because they used it as a beachhead to attack the culture, to attack the rest of faculty, to attack the rest of the students, and all at the government expense. So they lost what they built, and they lost what was there before all of this agenda-pushing nonsense. She continues, in many ways, the first steps were really getting people to talk about this. What is the implication? We were reading the law and saying, well, we can't have a division, but I think some of these things that we're doing would not be a violation of the law, and some of these things would need to change. But nobody really knew what it was going to look like, and that is incredibly difficult. There was a lot of talking through it and a lot of seeking clarification. Our law in Utah includes a requirement of our Utah Board of Higher Education to make a report to the legislative body at a certain time, so that they are charged with really ensuring that we're following the law. So it was also very important for us to hear from them. How are they interpreting the law? What might work? What might this look like? Can she explain why some of the university's cultural centers, including the American Indian Resource Center, which was renamed the Center for Native Excellence and Tribal Engagement, survived while others didn't? She responds, the law is that student resources and programs need to be made available to all students. In many ways, those who were working in these centers in particular were thinking, well, we don't restrict people from using these centers. But the guidance that we got from their school board was more instructive about the fact that resources and student support services need to be in a place where all students know they have access. There are obviously some perceptions that services and supports in some of these centers are not open to all students. The LGBT Resource Center at the University of Utah was just over 20 years old, and it had the word resource in its name. Certainly, our whole campus community benefited from programs and things like that. But ultimately, it was started as a student support center with resources. And so, if we take that away, what is that? The guidance that came also clarified that we could still have cultural centers based on the personal identity characteristics mentioned in the bill, but that those centers needed to have a very clear focus on only things like celebration, education, awareness of cultural issues that might be open to all and must be for the purpose of learning, and that they must not provide services. So no specific paid services from government-funded colleges and universities to specific groups. What does she think the future of cultural centers is at the University of Utah? She responds, our Black Cultural Center was our newest, or our youngest, and that really was designed around a lot of community building with the community and later developed some student services. That's why I think that there's a natural place for us to look at developing a potential for that to reopen. We're hoping to learn what this process would be through our first proposal to the school board coming up in October, where we're saying, quote, this is how we are first changing the centers to be what we think is compliant with the guidance and the bill. I think that we'll learn a lot from the process. What have we missed? What did we get right? What are their questions, concerns, and changes they want us to make? Or are we on track? And then I think we could say, okay, how might a Black Cultural Center be open and welcoming to everyone and provide that specific education and awareness? As long as it's not specific services. So they're not even saying in Utah, you can't have a Black Cultural Center. You just can't say only Black people are allowed to access it. Additionally, you can't say only Black people are allowed to receive specific government finance services, or LGBT people, or other people. It has to be available to everyone. She continues, it was designed again, very specifically, with outreach to our community, the Black Chamber of Commerce, the Divine Nine, sororities, and fraternities. We have a number of community organizations that the Black Cultural Center was interfacing with and doing programming with out in the community and bringing them here to campus. We would be also looking to the community to engage in providing that, but also being very thoughtful and intentional about the fact that all of that programming is open to all students and making clear that it is intended for everyone to come and enjoy. So no special space, as they like to say, when they defend these kinds of programs where only you of certain kinds are allowed into these programs and you can feel safe there because there aren't all these other people around that don't understand what it's like to be a person because you're different because you're this kind of person. So those people don't really get who you are. It's completely fine to have resources that everyone can participate in. It's completely not fine and totally inappropriate to only have certain resources available for certain kinds of people. That was the whole point of this. And the people that are pushing their agenda, they know exactly what they're doing. They know it's divisive. They know it makes people feel uncomfortable. They know it makes certain people feel entitled. And that those people take those destructive and even self-destructive ideas and bring them outside of college when they go into their future careers. Also, what is the impact of all these changes on the diversity, equity, and inclusion staff? She responds, it was a very significant morale issue, saying, quote, this won't exist. The bill also says an institution cannot take a position on some things, such as concepts, that were really part of the work that these offices did. Yes, because they're pushing ideology, so of course they're focused on, quote, certain concepts. She continues, it's been a grieving process for many of our staff who probably started that process earlier than our students and faculty. It was also kind of grappling with, where might we put this team? We thought some people might want to leave because of this tremendous change, and how do we kind of support that? In a way, while also thinking about how could we put these new teams together? This is something that we would normally do over the course of a year. In higher ed, we usually do things by task force and committee, and it takes a really long time. And this was a necessity to be ready by July 1st. And here's what they're really concerned about. How can minority students be supported in the absence of cultural centers? They can get support the way that all the other students can get support. But she continues, that's the primary concern for our faculty and staff, who rightly say, quote, if a student comes to me in a classroom or somewhere else, I would refer them to these centers, knowing that they would have a space that might be more comfortable, more safe to talk about what they're going through. Turning college students into college students with mental issues that they can't resolve on their own. I think student affairs and all of our student resources on campus have always strived to be a welcoming place for everyone. The Financial Wellness Center is providing financial literacy and workshops, and they've always tried to do it in a culturally thoughtful and relevant way. Now we have to really ensure that it's everywhere, because there will no longer be the Financial Wellness Workshop in the LGBT Resource Center, where someone maybe felt more comfortable asking questions about something related to that identity. Are you kidding me? You've got a financial wellness center in an LGBT division of a resource center? Just make it available to all students. Yes, sometimes there might be an uncomfortable question somewhere. Alternatively, your solution was, let's have the state government finance a special resource center where if you have a certain question about a certain issue that's maybe money related, but you're LGBT oriented, then you should only have to ask that question where you might be most comfortable asking that question. More realistically, you've got to learn how to get on with life. And if you're choosing this identity, then yeah, you're going to have to be that. And you're going to have to ask questions of people and deal with issues related to that and related to everything else that everyone else has to deal with, regardless of their skin color or their sexual preferences. She continues, we still need to make sure that students know there are people all over campus that want to help them and allow them to be their authentic selves when they're getting those services. No, you are who you are when you're asking a question. It doesn't change your identity to ask a question, even if it's a question directly related to what you say is your identity, because of course you get to pick who you are. It gets so convoluted. Yeah, there are people that are willing to answer your questions. You may have to do a little bit of extra work to figure out who you might be most comfortable asking the question of, or you could just Google it or go on ChatGPT. The Daily Universe reported that the closure of the University of Utah's LGBT Resource Center led to consternation among many. Its now former coordinator for community engagement, Tamoya Everett, said it felt like a punch to the gut and a former University of Utah student said the center's resources had saved her life. Attorney and LGBT activist Lauren Milliken Gray, who gave the commencement address at the center's premier Lavender graduation 20 years ago, said she was really heartbroken about the closure. If you're not sure what a Lavender graduation is, here's what it is. From the Failing Human Rights Campaign organization. A Lavender graduation is an annual ceremony conducted on numerous campuses to honor LGBT and ally students and acknowledge their achievements. Just go ahead and graduate, become part of society, and become who you are, be what you want to be. But stop asking for acknowledgement as if you are disabled or entitled or a different kind of person. You are who you are. Everyone should respect you for who you are, but they don't need to participate in your lifestyle or your priorities or your life. It's never been that way. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another story. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.